Anytime anybody at this point asks me advice about whether or not they should do this, I always tell them no. 100% of the time I tell them no, because if you're asking me that question, you shouldn't do it. It's a very difficult thing and you have to be obsessed with it to the point where there's just no doubt in your mind you're going to do it. And at that point, you're not asking anybody's opinion. Born and raised in Queens. My grandparents were a huge influence on cooking and on food. I remember really vividly spending time with my grandfather in his kitchen, my mom's dad. There are pictures of me at 1 basting a turkey in his arms.
Wow.
From the moment he woke up, he would put his apron on, whether he was cooking or not, because he was going to cook at some point that day. He was always in the kitchen. He played this music, Pavarotti and Mario Lanza, and even when it was time to eat, he would plate a course, sit down, never take his apron off, and eat in his apron, then get right back up and make the next course. He was the one that planted that bug in me that I love this. I love everything about it. Making the decision to actually like work in a kitchen, you get caught with like the industrial bug, the bug of like the tickets coming in and the rush of that and like the energy in a kitchen and everything that goes into a restaurant is totally different than just like loving food with your grandparents. Like, so
You don't work.
I work a little bit.
How did you meet your partners? What's the backstory there?
I'm blessed that the two guys that I get to do this with every day are my brothers. I love them. Rich I met at 18, the first week of culinary school. We were upstate, the CIA, Culinary Institute of America. And we met and we just sort of gravitated to each other because we were both New Yorkers. Because we weren't in class together, it really took after graduation, where he was working for Danielle Boulud at Cafe Boulud, and I was doing a one-day trail at Danielle, sort of his mothership. Rich was coming in to borrow something from Cafe, and he saw me in the kitchen. He just sort of like nodded his head, and he's like, "You're here?" And I was like, "Yeah, you're here." And I knew he was at Cafe, so there wasn't a job available at Danielle. So they said, there's something available at Cafe Boulud. I was like, well, I know someone there. So I went there, and Rich was working there, and in a small kitchen. It's a very tight-knit group. It's a band of brothers. So we became good friends for the first time, really working together a couple of years after graduation. Eventually we became roommates in a really small apartment that I had in the West Village. Really small apartment. 450 square foot studio, so no bedrooms. So there was a small staircase and I slept on the loft and he slept downstairs.
How did that work out? What happens when the girls come over?
There are some awkward nights. There, I think we became really close.
Bonded.
We were in a very similar place in our lives where we had worked for almost 10 years in New York. We had worked for great chefs, and we were sort of contemplating individually doing something on our own. And we were both experimenting with the idea, I'm going to open something, he's going to open something. We would bounce ideas off each other. He's like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing something like this, and I'd bounce something off of him. And the financial crisis of 2008 happened. So any sort of investors that might have been willing to take a chance on kids with no background dried up immediately. So all we had, each of us, was some money from friends and family. Our options were continue to work for somebody else or put both our families' money together and do something small together, really small. So we chose that, and we found a 450 square foot space on Mulberry Street, of all places. And Rich called me. We had been looking forever for a space. We had lost a couple places that we really wanted. And he called me and he's like, yo, I'm on Mulberry Street. And we just started laughing. We're like, the quintessential Italian-American street. And at first we're like, that's too cheesy. Like, we can't do that. And then we're like, you know what? That's a kind of a great idea. Like, let's be part of Little Italy. And we loved the space, and the landlord was willing to take a chance on us. And we took that space and we did basically a deli. It was open in the morning and the afternoons. We sold sandwiches and a little bit of hot food. The goal was just keep the doors open, don't lose our family's money. That was really the goal. And then we were like, okay, we got to try to do this nighttime thing, because as much as we love selling sandwiches, like, that's not our ambition. So we wrote one menu a night on a chalkboard, because we had a tiny kitchen and no staff. It wasn't a gimmick, like, that's all we could serve in the night. And at first it didn't go well. Like, really no one would show up. Anyone that would show up heard about it being a sandwich shop and they wanted sandwiches, and we would say, no, we're actually serving this menu tonight. And the customers would be like, for who? This place is empty. Like, just make me a sandwich. And we're like, no. Like, we kind of stuck to our guns. We're like, we're doing this menu. It was $45 for the whole menu. It was 3 courses plus a little like cookie plate at the end. And nobody came for a while, and it got really scary. And then thankfully, New York Magazine sent their critics in to review us, and wrote us a really beautiful review that sort of put us on the map, and the company started that day, you know?
This is the same restaurant that got the James Beard nomination, right?
We got a nomination that year for Best New Restaurant in
Yeah.
the country. I don't put a lot of merit in the James Beard Foundation,
Yeah.
and because I don't put a lot of merit in it, I don't have any of them. It's really not a sore loser thing that I haven't won one. I just don't like the way they go about doing it. I've watched too many of my mentors suffer through that process of wanting and waiting for their approval from this group, and I never wanted to be in that position. It was an honor that first year to be up for that. We didn't win it, but just to be there was great. Through opening that restaurant, one of our first customers was my other partner, Jeff. Jeff is a gregarious, amazing, the world is always half full kind of person. To say he's the business guy of this company is to the great detriment of everything else that he does for us. He is the palate of the company. If he says it's not good enough to serve, we don't serve it. Rich and I both rely on him to be the final approval of anything that we're making. On top of being the business guy, he's often the face of it because, you know, we're both behind the scenes, and Jeff is the guy meeting everybody, knowing everybody, shaking all the hands. He was an early, excited customer. We went out for drinks after he had dinner there one night, and we just sort of talked about our dreams, and our dreams seemed to really line up. And me and Rich knew that we would always need somebody to help us along the way, and we were like, I think this could be the guy. And, you know, one of the greatest decisions we've ever made in our whole lives. We were called for a long time the Teresi brothers. Even though we're not brothers, we are basically brothers. And then with Jeff, we renamed the company to Major Food Group.
Tell me about Carbone. Tell me the story. How was Carbone born? Because the first one was named after Rich.
Yeah,
Parm came shortly after.
Parm was next door. Basically, Parm, we spawned off the deli that was Teresi into Parm. And Teresi became just sort of a dinner restaurant. We happened to have the space next door became available, so we took that space. We had always wanted to do this kind of restaurant. This idea was what Jeff and I talked about the first night we went out. I know this block, Thompson Street, really well. I used to work at Lupa as an intern for Mario Batali. So when the space became available, I think all of our eyes lit up, you know, to inhabit a great old New York City Italian restaurant. This restaurant, Rocco, was built in 1922 and was Rocco up until then. So to have the opportunity to do this style restaurant in this building was all we needed to know. And so this was one of the great old Italian neighborhoods. You know, everything is built around churches. You know, that's how immigrants settle. So this neighborhood, Bleecker Street, Thompson Street, you know, this was, and you know, there's still relics of it. To be in this neighborhood felt so right. And then what we did inside was what I wanted to do was champion the first generation Italian Americans. I was born here. I associate myself with being an Italian American. We are a hybrid culture. We focused on the 1950s of New York because most of the migration of Southern Italian immigrants happened in the early 1900s. They lived here, they got married here, they had kids here. By the time those kids grew up to be old enough to be business owners, you're looking at the 50s, the 40s and 50s, where they're being business owners. So they are the first generation Italian Americans. So this is the beginning of that cuisine on a really fine dining scale. And all that was left of this before Carbone was really restaurants that had fallen on disrepair and just were not as good as they used to be, or restaurants that are sort of tourist traps that are more of a joke toward the culture. So I wanted to open something where we took, you know, all of our culinary knowledge, took it really serious, bought the best ingredients, and made an Italian-American restaurant that was on caliber of a great European restaurant. We were all in on this. We took all the momentum from Teresi and from Parm, and we opened what at the time seemed like a giant restaurant. I remember the weight of the world being on all of us to do this well and to get a good review from the New York Times and to have it be busy and be accepted, because this is a cuisine that's so familiar to New Yorkers. I mean, I'm serving chicken scarp and veal parm, and I'm serving dishes that New Yorkers have had thousands of times. The gamble behind doing that is crazy. Like, it's almost easier to create something that a customer has never had before and say, that's how I interpret this dish. And if you don't like it, well, then maybe you just don't like my interpretation. Right. I can't do that with veal parm. If you don't like it, then I probably didn't do it right. Like, you've had it, you know it. So that's the challenge that I give these guys, is that how do we produce the very best possible version of something a customer of ours has had hundreds and hundreds of times before.
There was a New York Times critic, Pete Bells, that said, and I quote, that the experience at Carbone is completely faithful to your memories while being much better than you imagined. So I guess you kind of accomplished a major feat, that when people come here, they experience those familiar dishes at another level.
Yeah, it's still probably the greatest accomplishment of my professional life, is to get that review from that guy for this restaurant at that point in our lives and our company. It said to the world, we're here to stay.
Another thing I noticed, I went on your website and it said you have to make a reservation a month in advance, and it kind of reminded me of Rayo's a little bit.
There are definitely similarities to Rayo's, and Rayo's is a restaurant that we treat very much in a brother-sister way. Yeah. We know them really well. Yeah. Their chef comes here on his nights off, and we go there, and ownership is friendly. I have a blast going to Rayo's. I love it there.
I just think it's really cool that you put it out there that, you want to make a reservation, you're going to have to be thinking about it a month in advance.
It's not that big of a restaurant, and thankfully, there is a really high demand for it. Now, through the power of social media and food outlets, anyone coming to New York that's looking for a really quintessential New York Italian experience often is looking to come here. So between the influx of people coming to the city and people in the city, and then trying to take care of our regulars, that's really important to us. Anyone that's been here a lot of times, that's spent a lot of money here, we want to make sure that they're being taken care of. So there's just not enough seats,
How many seats are there?
There's 80 to 85 seats, depending on how many you can squeeze in.
In 8 years, you have 18 restaurants, and you've opened in another country, in Hong Kong, you're in Las Vegas. Where do you plan on opening next?
We want to be in places we love, so that the work never creeps in. Just like you're saying, it's always a joy, it's always a pleasure. You're never like, oh, I got to get on a plane and go here. While not knowing where we're going to open next, I know the cities that I love. I would love to be in London because I love London. I want to be in California because it's always gorgeous there. To earmark places in the world that I'd love to be in is sort of the best way to go about it. Opportunities come along, but as soon as you start doing deals for the money, it becomes work, it becomes this job. And as long as I'm like, great, I get to go to London this week, then it ensures that the love stays there, I think.
When you are not in the kitchen, how would you describe your personal style?
I'm an old soul in sort of everything that I do. My style, I think, is a byproduct of me sort of always thinking through this prism. I'm always sort of thinking about Carbone, or sort of the Italian-American lifestyle. I'm always sort of preaching and talking about it to the teams. I think my style is a derivative of that. I own a lot of clothes, and I love fashion, but it goes deeper than just shopping. I love the industry. I love learning about designers and how they get their inspiration. I am also forced to be a seasonally inspired person. I am always putting out a new menu. I'm always looking to the next season. So I look to them a lot, and I try to study it, both the masters of the past and the people of the present, because I see a lot of parallels in their industry and in my industry, and the constant need to be inspired, but also know your roots, know who your customer base is. So there's a lot that goes into that and why I think I've become so fascinated with that industry. The early part of my days are spent going around to the restaurants, to meetings, and meeting with my teams, and I'm in a car a lot, I'm running around the city a lot. So like today I'm in a tracksuit. Like, I own a lot of tracksuits. I particularly love the one I'm wearing from Zegna. I'm also not a baggy kind of guy. I like a little bit more tailored things. Like, I am not the streetwear guy, even though I, by age, probably should be. Like, that's just not my thing. But I do like, I need to be comfortable during the day because I'm running around like an idiot. And then at night, if I'm here, if I'm at, particularly at Carbone, I like to look like an owner. I'm going to wear either a suit, maybe not a tie, but I'll wear a suit, a sweater, or a t-shirt. And so I have a lot of tracksuits, I have a lot of suits. That's quintessentially Italian American.